Hi everybody, it's You Had to Ask, the show where I answer your questions, and this week my first question comes to me from Brad Baumander, who says, Hi Steve, what did you know about Ray Comfort before you started reading his book? I watched him in one debate with Aaron Raw. I thought he was an okay guy, but he wasn't so much debating as preaching. After seeing your first video on him, I'm shocked on how stupid and simultaneously condescending he is. I used to watch his show Way of the Master. I've mentioned in a few other videos that I've done that I not so much anymore, but at one time I was kind of a regular viewer or voyeur, would probably be more appropriate, of TBN. And Ray Comfort's show was on TBN, and he would be one of the guests on their flagship program, Praise the Lord, every once in a while. And so I knew of him, I knew his act. You know, I knew his shtick of, going up to people on the street, doing like the man in the street thing with the microphone and asking them if they had ever have you ever told a lie? Have you ever stolen? Have you ever blah, blah, blah? And I know I'm not doing an Australian accent because I suck at accents, but, that's what he does. And I was familiar with that. I was familiar with his general act. I was familiar with his epic bromance with Kirk Cameron. But like you, I was not quite fully prepared for the depth of his idiocy, for the incredibly high, face palms per minute rate when you read his actual work, when you read a full-on Ray Comfort book and you have him in all his glory, and there you are presented in stark black and white with his arguments, with his logic, with his strongest defense for the faith. And it's just garbage. It's just laughable. There's not one reasonable, compelling thing there. There's nothing even approaching a compelling argument, or in many cases, a coherent thought. It is kind of shocking to get up close and personal to it and to analyze it in detail and think and realize, holy shit. I mean, holy shit. So yeah, I'm only 2 weeks into the An Atheist Reads Ray Comfort series, and it's going to run 10, so we'll see if I make it. Jeff Edberg, I'm a little confused. You said if you could make a Star Trek-like show, you'd make sure it had no season-long story arcs and fill it with exploration, yet you've said before that DS9 is your favorite Star Trek show. Isn't that exactly what that show did and didn't do? True, there was some exploration on that show, but not like the original series or Voyager, a show you despise. And the big war with the Cardassians and the Dominion was multi-seasons long. Explain thyself. Well, just because Deep Space Nine doesn't fit my stated general preferences for a Star Trek show, or it doesn't conform to the type of Star Trek show that I personally would do if given that opportunity, it doesn't mean that I automatically am not going to like it. And just because I tend to not like, long-term multi-episode or even multi-season story arcs, it doesn't mean that I don't think they ever work. And actually, one of my favorite shows ever, and definitely my favorite show on the air right now, Louie, is in the middle of coming to the end of a season that has been dominated by a long multi-episode story arc. The elevator story on Louie is a six-episode story arc. And I think it works brilliantly. I mean, I think it's fucking amazing. I loved it. So, just because I have a general dislike for that format doesn't mean that I just reject it and I automatically like things that don't do that better than things that do it. And the other thing is, I really, really enjoyed things about Deep Space Nine that had nothing to do with either its use of long-form storytelling or its setting on a space station as opposed to a starship that flies out and explores space. I loved the acting. I loved Avery Brooks, and I loved the character of Captain Sisko. I loved the character of Odo. I loved the tension between the Starfleet presence and the Bajorans with the Cardassians sort of out on the edge. I love the political conflict and sort of the allegory that was taking place between the Cardassians and the Bajorans, which was a lot sort of like the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I just really enjoyed a lot of it, and a lot of those things that I really enjoyed the most about Deep Space Nine are found predominantly in the first 3 or 4 seasons, and then they're sort of pushed aside for that Dominion War story arc that dominates the back half of the show. And some of those episodes were really, really, really good. But I think if I look at the show as it was before that Dominion War kind of became the dominant story versus after, I prefer it before. I certainly am not going to say that the Dominion story arc was a complete waste of time, but I think the show itself was more interesting to me before it became that. But yeah, Deep Space Nine, even though I don't tend to like those forms of storytelling, or at least I prefer episodic storytelling, especially for something like Star Trek. I feel like Star Trek, especially when you look at like the original series, Star Trek to me is best when it's an adventure show that occasionally has something serious to say. But first and foremost, it should be an adventure show. It should be like a Western in space. And I know everybody's saying Firefly, Firefly. That's to me that's like what Star Trek was and is at its best. And that's what my Star Trek show would be like. And even though Deep Space Nine wasn't really anything like that, that doesn't mean that I'm not allowed to like it, because I liked it very, very much. Richard Parker, Dear Mr. Steve, I know some atheist agnostics, and myself included, that at times struggle with the loss of our faith. Sometimes we tend to feel alone, and when life hits hard and things feel hopeless, believing in something greater than yourself, like a God, was helpful back then when we were believers. But sometimes nowadays it's hard when we struggle with hard times, and we know that there's no one there to help us, God, and we tend to feel alone. Life at times feels lonely or purposeless. Any thoughts or advice? My wife sitting right over there just suggested get a dog. That is actually really great advice. The thing is, we as humans, as beings in the universe, may be alone in the sense that there's not a God looking after us, but it doesn't mean we as individuals are alone. We have each other. We have our friends. We have our families. We have our fellow human beings, our brothers and sisters, our fellow men and women, and that can be a big help, And we have, like, it sounds like a glib answer, but a dog, a cat, something to give you some comfort, to make you feel loved, to make you feel needed, to make you feel like you have a purpose. Work, something creative, something that gives your life meaning, that makes you feel like you're doing something worthwhile. There are all sorts of things, little things and big things, from raising children to writing a novel that even though you think nobody's ever going to read it, it gives you something to do. It gives you a feeling of purpose. It gives you a goal for the day. When you wake up in the morning, you think of what you want to do today. That's a wonderful feeling. Things like that can help. And those things have nothing to do with atheism or religion or God or whatever. Those are just, to me, those are just things that give your life meaning. They give my life meaning, that can give anyone's life meaning. Those things as they relate particularly to you. And those are the things that I turn to and that I cling to and that I think of when I'm in those low moments. When something happens, or when just a passing thought occurs to you and it becomes a little hard to shake off, when you start to contemplate mortality or the loss of a friend or the loss of a family member and things seem really rough, those are the things that I think of. Those are the things that I turn back to. The work, the loved ones, the pet, the whatever it is that makes life meaningful to me and makes life worthwhile. And the other thing that gives me some comfort is knowing that I haven't lost anything by not believing. It's not as though God was there and now that I don't believe in him, he's gone. He was never there. Nothing was taken from me. I haven't lost anything. I've just realized that I never had it to begin with. And looking at it that way is a big help to me too. I don't know if it'll be a help to you, but that's how I deal with things, and that's how I see things, and it works okay for me. So hopefully something like that could be helpful to you too. Pollixter421, thank you very much, Steve, for that reply. You really scared me by answering me back. Somewhat related question. During the same time of showing videos, I showed my friend some quotes of the late Hitchens, and he had regarded it as being very disrespectful and had not enjoyed them at all. This being one. I tried to deny myself any illusions or delusions, and I think that this perhaps entitles me to try and deny the same to others, at least as long as they refuse to keep their fantasies to themselves. He also hates talking about the bad stuff about religion and me bringing it up. In the future, I will try to respect his opinions and even stop talking about these subjects, but we seem to be on different sides of the atheist spectrum. He feels atheism can be just as bad as any religion because of how people can abuse both to be dogmatic, violent, disrespectful, etc. I disagree, since there's no real atheist leadership currently to have such things to promote, and I have never seen mass killings in the name of no God or evolution. He also sees religious text as neutral, and people just decide what they want to practice, and if they do bad, it's on them. But I feel these books are more of a problem because they excuse and even promote poor behavior in their followers. Lastly, he thinks theological things in religion do not really do any harm, but I feel they undermine science and rationality. I would like to know, who do you agree with more? How much should we respect religion? And were these quotes really that disrespectful? I agree with you more than your friend. I mean, I see where your friend is coming from, but I think I agree with you more. We should respect religion. The way I view it is we should not respect religion. We should respect the right of people to believe in religion and to practice religion up to the point that the practice of that religion infringes on the rights of other people. Religion itself, the theology, the dogma, the claims, I don't think deserves any respect until it can substantiate the things that it's claiming. If religion can demonstrate that something it says is the truth, then sure, that claim deserves respect, because I think the truth deserves respect. But claims that are unsubstantiated, especially incredibly outlandish claims that have attached to them these pretensions to authority or specialness, exceptions to rules that apply to other people, or the ability to apply rules to others who might not want those rules applied to them. Those sorts of things I think deserve no respect at all. But people who are religious and believe in a religious system, believe in the existence of a God or the existence of an afterlife or some sort of religious construct that they truly have conviction about, I mean, I think their right to believe that should be respected. But the belief itself is not entitled to any respect. Now, that doesn't mean you should be a prick about it. You can be nice about it. You can be friendly about it. You can have a vigorous adversarial conversation with someone and still treat them as a friend rather than an enemy, and still avoid being rude and being hurtful to them. But that doesn't mean you have to show their belief or their religion any undue respect or tiptoe around it. Or pretend that religion is the same thing as science, or that there's no reason other than personal preference to accept or reject the Bible. It's all just sort of up to you. I agree with you on that. I don't believe that at all. I do think it's more reasonable to to reject religion than to accept it. But if someone does choose to accept it, I accept their right to do that, and I respect it. And no, the quotes weren't that bad. That Hitchens quote that you included in your question was not that bad, I don't think. It wasn't bad at all. It was actually kind of awesome. Warp Rules. Steve, you mentioned subtlety in action movies in your answer to the question of whether you like Zack Snyder movies or not. This reminded me of the new Godzilla movie. Many people complained that while the movie was good, it showed too little of Godzilla himself. However, personally, I really liked how the movie was made, specifically because it had subtlety, rather than being a mindless, in-your-face action flick. What's your opinion on it? My opinion is pretty much your opinion, I think. One of the things I admired most about the Godzilla movie stylistically was the restraint that it showed. The restraint that the director exhibited in shooting Godzilla, right up until that final big fight, where you see a lot of Godzilla, and it's a really awesome monster fight. Up until that point, it's very careful. And I would say it's very artful about how it shows us Godzilla and how it chooses not to show us Godzilla, how it gives us tantalizing glimpses. People who complained about not having enough Godzilla in the Godzilla movie, to me, they don't sound like they've ever seen a movie that was trying to build suspense, was trying to tantalize them, was trying to tease them, to get them excited about a payoff at the end. Movies today just want to give everything away right away. They just try to overwhelm you with just sheer blunt force. Action, 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 action. But there's a much more artful, much more subtler, and I feel much more skillful and ultimately rewarding way of doing it. And it is the way that the new Godzilla film does it. By slowly building, by giving you glimpses here and there, and then finally paying it off at the end. And if you want to have, if you want to know more about what I thought about the Godzilla movie and hear me discuss it at length, in depth, you should go to Jason with a D's YouTube channel. If you haven't seen our review of it already, Jason with a D, the acting mayor of Opinionville. He has an awesome YouTube channel if you're not familiar with his work. And he and I did the first of what will hopefully be an occasional series of Google Hangouts where we review movies together. And the video is called A Late Seating Review of Godzilla, and it's on. I'll link to it in the description box. And it's on Jason with a D's YouTube channel, and if you want to know pretty much everything I think about the new Godzilla movie, you should watch that, because it's an awesome video, and Jason does a great job as well. And the short form of it is, I thought the new Godzilla movie was awesome. I loved it, and most of what I loved about it was what you just said in your question, Warp Rules, that the way, the subtlety and the restraint with which it was shot was very impressive to me. Hey, here's a question from Jason with a D. He says, I'm starting to think that the fantasy genre is not in your wheelhouse. Is there any work of fantasy that you did enjoy? And Afterthought BTW also asked a question about fantasy. He asked how I would define fantasy. I guess if you go by the literary definition of fantasy, it's typically that term fantasy is applied to just stuff having to do with magic. And there's high fantasy, which is typically defined as stories taking place in sort of alternate magical realms, in the far past or in another universe or in some distant far off place that is not meant to be a representation of our own world that we live in every day. Then there are other types of fantasy. There's low fantasy, there's urban fantasy, there's, and you could even say maybe magical realism fits in there somewhere. Just stories where magical things happen. And generally, I'm not a fan of that. Now, there are exceptions. Harry Potter is a huge exception to that. I think the Harry Potter... I haven't read the Harry Potter books, but the Harry Potter films, to me, are excellent. And I enjoy the hell out of them. But mostly not for the fantasy elements. It's just there are other parts to the Harry Potter stories. The characters, the humor, the acting... the balance of drama and humor, the coming of age stuff, the sort of the themes of growing up and accepting responsibility. Those are what really draw me to those stories. And honestly, the magic stuff, when it delves too deeply into the magic stuff and it indulges too much in that sort of magical world building stuff, it kind of loses me. I kind of get bored with it. But anyway, Harry Potter would be definitely an exception to the rule that I don't like fantasy. And it depends on how broadly you define fantasy as well. If you take the term fantasy to its broadest possible interpretation, then yeah, superheroes can count as fantasy, science fiction could count as fantasy, Star Trek would be fantasy, Star Wars would be fantasy, as Afterthought BTW suggested. And yeah, if you broaden it out that far, then yeah, there's a lot of stuff that would qualify as fantasy that I not only enjoy, but really, really, really love. So it just depends on how you define the term. It was raining outside right before I started shooting this, but I think it's kind of calmed down now. I was afraid for a second I wouldn't be able to do this tonight because I was afraid we would have some kind of a storm. And maybe I spoke too soon. Or maybe it's not a storm at all. Maybe it means that it's time for
the lightning round. Rapid fire questions, glib and adequate answers.
Kiovar, do you actually watch all of the channels you shout out to on a regular basis? No, I don't. I wouldn't say I watch them all on a regular basis. I kind of check in on them every now and then just to see what they're up to see if what I've missed. But I know I mean, look, this will be shout out number 87 this week. So I don't watch 80. I don't have 87 channels that I watch on a regular basis. But I try to keep up with them and check in on them every now and then. Skirkawa. Do you ever have a dream where you're really thirsty and you keep drinking water cup after cup, but it does no good whatsoever because your body is thirsty for real, but you're only drinking imaginary water in the dream? If so, isn't that just awful? I've never had that dream, but that sounds really awful. But, you know, I have had the opposite of that dream, where you dream that you get up and go to the bathroom and take a piss, and then in real life you are still in bed, but you really are taking a piss. Hasn't happened to me for a long, long time. But it was, I mean, you know, it was pretty embarrassing. In limbo, yo Steve, I'm not saying you need it, but would you ever consider cosmetic surgery? If so, what would you have done? Also, what are your thoughts on it in general? Thanks, dude. I don't think I would ever have it unless it was like a reconstructive situation, like if I were disfigured somehow by some horrible disease or an accident. I mean, yeah, then I would probably have reconstructive surgery. But just for sheer, like just pure cosmetic surgery, just completely on an elective basis, no, there's nothing I want done. I think I look fine the way I am. I don't really get that. I sometimes I even wonder why people dye their hair. Like, I just don't understand it. It just doesn't, it's never even remotely occurred to me that it's something I would want to do. But if people want to do it, that's fine. Like, it's not up to me. I'm not the boss of other people. I don't look down on people who get plastic surgery because they think it'll make them look better or change their appearance. People should do whatever they want to do. It's none of my business. And it doesn't affect my judgment of their character. Bill F. 1967. Given your opinion of Zack Snyder's frenetic visual style, what is your view on Baz Luhrmann? While Luhrmann can tell fairly straightforward stories, his visual style has been criticized for being overdone. Thoughts? Oh yes, I think his visual style has been rightly criticized as being overdone. I think he's one of the most hyperactive and intrusive directors that is working. In fact, I saw his version of The Great Gatsby, and I almost like turned it off until Gatsby comes in and becomes like a main character in the film. That first act, that first maybe half hour or so leading up to DiCaprio's appearance as Gatsby is almost unwatchable for me. It's so obnoxious and just frenzied and desperate and just sort of like, ooh, this and this and this and this and this, and just yeah, I really didn't enjoy it. But once Gatsby showed up, it felt like stylistically the movie really settled down and became pretty much a straight, more elegantly told story as opposed to all the showy, flashy Baz Luhrmann shit that I hate. So yeah, I would say overdone is a great description of Baz Luhrmann. Generally speaking, I'm not a fan. Rosemary Williams. Hey Steve, in another video of yours about why you hate Memorial Day, we saw you standing next to a fridge with Ashley, and while she looked to be roughly 5'2" to 5'4", you seemed to be around 6'4", yet you responded that you were only a bit over 6. So I was wondering, how tall are you and Ashley really? And also, when you guys are in videos together, are you in a really low chair or is she in a really high chair? Because neither of you look physically uncomfortable like I would expect from a chair being too low for long legs or so high that one's feet don't touch the ground. Yet you're of similar height. Oh, by the way, another one of you guys, KT4786, also asked about my height. For the record, I am just a tiny bit under 6'1". And Ashley is 4'9", so there is a big height difference between us. And when we do videos together sitting side by side, she is boosted up to my level, so that it's an acceptable camera composition, you know, so that I'm not way up here and she's not way down there, so it looks good. And we put something on the floor for her to rest her feet on, so her feet aren't dangling and she's nice and comfortable. Now you know. Little secret, little trick of the trade. When you need to boost people of different heights to make them look compatible or acceptable next to each other in a two-shot. Boost the lower person up and give them something to rest their feet on. That's how you do it. Radical Bacon, have you supported the Reading Rainbow Kickstarter? Yes, I have. Yes, I have, and proudly. I wish I could afford to give it more. I donated $10. I wish I could afford to donate a lot more because I love Reading Rainbow, and it's so awesome that Kickstarter has been so successful. John Schrader, hey Steve, if you had to wear another kind of hat, what would you wear? I don't know, man. If I couldn't wear the baseball cap, I probably just wouldn't wear a hat. Maybe like a knit cap or something. I don't know. I wouldn't want to wear a cowboy hat. I wouldn't want to wear a fedora. I think those look really stupid and pretentious. I don't know. If I couldn't wear a baseball cap, I'd probably just look like this. I don't know. Does that look like me? Does that look like me? That's what I would probably look. I haven't done anything with my hair today at all because I always wear a hat. But anyway, yeah, if it's probably this or nothing. Hey, that's it for the questions. Before I get out of here, I'm going to give a shout out as I always do. And the shout out this week, it is Extremely Boring. And that is her channel name, but she is anything but. Her content is excellent and anything but boring. She's a really sharp, intelligent person with a lot to say and a lot worth hearing. And if you are like me and you have contempt for the men's rights movement and you're tired of sort of the hip thing being people taking the piss out of feminism or trying to draw some sort of equivalency between the men's rights movement and feminism, like people who say, and I know a lot of you think this, and I just don't agree with you, I'm sorry, that, well, yeah, the men's rights movement and feminism, they're kind of the same thing, and they both have their points to make, but they both have their bad points too. I completely reject that. They're not the same thing. They're different on a fundamental level. And if you want to know why I think that and why other people of the same mindset think that, Extremely Boring's YouTube channel is a great place to start because her feminist videos, her videos addressing things about the men's rights movement are just terrific, just absolutely terrific. She talks about things like rape culture. She's doing a video series now. She's two videos into it, and she's going to continue it, hopefully, at some point, reviewing Warren Farrell's book, The Myth of Male Power, which is sort of one of the founding texts of the men's rights movement. So if this topic is at all interesting to you, if the men's rights movement, feminism, any of that stuff, gender equality, rape culture, if it's of interest to you in any way, if you find yourself often thinking poorly of feminism and you want to know why people are attracted to that viewpoint, why people are attracted to that philosophy and that movement, and you want to hear it expressed and defended in a reasonable way, Extremely Boring is definitely the person for you. And if you are tired of hearing feminism shat on and tired of hearing the men's rights movement apologized for, like me, Extremely Boring is an awesome channel to look to as someone who is a like-minded person and someone who is able to carry off that attitude, that philosophy, that position in a way that I think is really, really appealing. So check out Extremely Boring. A criminally low sub count. I mean, a couple of hundred subs on this channel at this point. Let's see if we can boost that up a little bit because she deserves it. It's a really, really great channel. Extremely Boring is the shout out this week. So that's it for this week. I will be back next week to do this all over again, provided, of course, that you guys ask me some questions. So leave a comment on this video. Ask me anything about anything. Nothing is too serious. Nothing is too sober. All subjects are on the table, and I will answer as many of them as I possibly can next time. So until next time, have a good week, everybody, and I'll see you.